Welcome to Diabetes Primetime, everyone, and Happy New Year. I'm so excited to be back with you all. Tonight, we are talking with psychologist Dr. Michael Vallis about setting goals for the new year and how to do it in a way that will help us be successful. Before we get started, though, tell me where you're watching from and what your New Year's resolution is. I'd love to hear it. Dr. Vallis, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
So I think almost everybody sets New Year's resolutions at the beginning of the year, even though most of us quickly abandon them. But let's take a step back. Why is it important to set goals when it comes to diabetes, regardless of the time of year? What does having kind of a big goal enable us to do?
It's a great question. And it is interesting, isn't it, that we have this sort of new year, a new goal, which is all well and good, but really they don't amount to anything. So the question then becomes, what are the important goals? Because you really do need goals. It is a journey. Living with diabetes is a 24/7, 12 month a year. It's a slog. And it's really important for us to acknowledge that, to not make it seem like it's just an easy adjust. And so I think it's really important for how do you keep going? So think of somebody running a marathon. How could that person just keep going? The only way they can keep going is by having smaller goals. I call it counting telephone poles. You just have to run to the next telephone pole. Well, it's actually not so far along. Look at where it is. So you just have to go that little bit further. And of course, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single footstep. So I think it's really important to emphasize that goals are critically important, even though at this time, New Year's resolution goals,
All right, so goals, good. Thinking that we're going to overhaul everything in the new year, probably not so realistic or good.
Exactly. It's not about the what, it's about the why. And once you've figured out your why, that's when the what becomes important. And so the goals are critically important to accomplish the what, but without the why. And that's why New Year's resolutions fail. Because as soon as you run into the hardship, as soon as you realize you bit off more than you can chew, as soon as you realize that all your dreams aren't going to come true, then you just sort of think, and the why isn't there, and so the goal fades. So there's nothing wrong whatsoever with the goal. It's why are you doing it? And why are we doing New Year's resolution? And the answer is very clear, because
it's a new year. Something's going to be different.
Exactly. So it's a skim of ice on a puddle. There's why are you doing this? Because it's the time of year.
All right, lots more to talk with you about, but before we get too far along, I want to do tonight's trivia question. Folks, our giveaway tonight is going to help you achieve your goal, whatever it is. It's a super cool worksheet that will help you start and stick to a morning routine. And you will get it for free if you answer tonight's trivia question, which is, true or false, dehydration can have a negative impact on your mood and energy levels. Is that true or false? Can dehydration impact your mood and energy? Tell us your best guess in the comments, and you will get that awesome guide to starting your day off right. And as always, trivia tonight is brought to you by ArcRay. As your diabetes health ally, ArcRay helps make diabetes management easy and affordable. Visit arcrayusa.com/cost to receive a free blood glucose monitor along with wellness materials to help simplify your diabetes management. All right, Dr. Vallis, we hear a lot about setting SMART goals, meaning specific, measurable, timed, and we'll talk about that. But before we get there, do you recommend that people have a big goal or like a big intention, something like getting their A1C to target or maybe losing a little weight? Do you think that having that sense of where we're trying to go is helpful to people?
Absolutely, yeah. But again, what you can control is what's immediately in front of you. So what are you going to do today, at lunch, at dinner, in the morning? And those goals are actually the really important ones to focus on. The big goals are really, really important, but think about them as like, the sun setting on the horizon. That's the general direction that you want to go into. So with those goals, they don't actually have to be as smart. The daily goals need to be smart. I would say to us all, the big goals should be more, bring me your best. Who are you when you're at your best? What are your traits? What are your qualities? What do you like most about yourself? What's your value? What's your contribution? And then have goals that take you in that direction.
So what I hear you saying is it's really important for people to think about what matters to them and kind of set their big goal, kind of their, as you say, their true north, their direction based on, I want to be around for my grandkids, or it's really important for me to have energy. And then start setting some specific, measurable, I can't remember what all the SMART stands for, but start setting specific goals based on that direction. And what I hear you saying is the new year is not a why. That may be a time you choose to focus on your why, but that in and of itself is not going to get us there. We've got to think about what matters to us.
Exactly. And I would add to that there's nothing wrong with a New Year's resolution if you use it as an opportunity to discover your why. So I'll take motivation wherever I see it, wherever I find it, but don't let the event be all. The event is just the occasion that sets us up where, okay, let's have a look at what we're doing. Let's have a look at our health behavior. Let's have a look at how we're managing diabetes and then make the decision, okay, is this a time I want to do something different? I think it is. Okay, now why?
All right, folks, if you would like to start the new year getting more informed about diabetes, check out our podcast. We do interviews with diabetes experts about everything from eating well to preventing complications. You'll learn a ton while you're in the car or doing the dishes. Just search Diabetes What to Know wherever you listen to podcasts. Dr. Vallis, you started out by talking about managing diabetes is difficult. It is a journey of 1,000 miles. If someone is feeling like they aren't doing well with diabetes, if just thinking about it makes them feel overwhelmed, what would you recommend they do? How can they begin to reframe it?
Yeah, this is actually a really important issue. And I have to confess that this issue is made even more important because I think we health professionals in diabetes probably do a pretty poor job. And I would just ask anyone living with diabetes to reflect on when you go to a diabetes professional, physician, dietitian, nurse, psychologist, whatever, do you ever feel like a kid being called into the principal's office? Do you ever think, oh, I got to get my blood record together? It's like, oh, they're going to be examining me.
They're going to fuss at me. Yeah.
That's right. Exactly. And the reason for that, you see, is because we're so interested in your health. We're interested in your wellness. So we tend to focus on, okay, well, here are the goals. And then how are you doing relative to the goals? And that's the mistake. Like we know with our children, your kid comes home with a 92. The last thing you're going to do as a parent is say, how come you didn't get the other 8 points? But that's the first thing that we do as diabetes providers, is we sort of say, well, you know what? I look at a blood glucose record and I say 3 things. Oh, you didn't test here and you didn't test here. And oh, you were high here and high here. And oh, you were low here and low here. In other words, let me tell you how bad you are.
Focus on the problems. Exactly.
Right. So we sort of tend to compare everything to perfect, which is the biggest mistake when it comes to supporting change. We have to remove the judgment, because I think any one of us can improve by focusing on what is our next step. And that's where goals become so important, because they can help you determine that next step.
For those of you who are just joining us, we're here with psychologist Dr. Michael Vallis, talking about setting ourselves up for success in the new year. And we are giving away an awesome worksheet for healthy habits in the morning to help you do that. All you have to do is answer tonight's trivia question, which is, true or false, dehydration can have a negative impact on your mood and energy levels. Is that true or false? Put your guess in the comments to get that worksheet. And tell us your favorite way to stay hydrated. For me, mine is unsweetened iced tea. All right, Dr. Vallis, I think for a lot of us, we have a lot of enthusiasm for change at the beginning of the year. But, by this time of year, middle of January, end of January, it is hard to stay motivated. How might you suggest someone refocus on their diabetes goals and keep doing the not so easy behaviors that we need to do to be healthy?
Yeah, that's a really great question. There's at least two stages of change. There's making the change and there's maintaining the change. And what's really interesting, Ansley, is what you're describing really is making the change. And that's the easy part. That's the part that has the newness and the excitement about it. And then you get into this maintaining the change. And the way I like to think about it is many people, when they begin their goal, they just think about the goal line, right? So here's what I'm looking for. But it's not the goal. It's doing the work to get to the goal. So it's moving the ball forward inch by inch by inch by inch by inch, getting knocked back down again. So you make a change to your diet, and now all of a sudden you've lost friends because the people you used to hang around with always would want to go to these places that made it difficult for you to choose healthy foods. And so you would like to go to a healthy place by yourself. So all of a sudden, that's to be expected. So what we try to do is, and this is really where the realistic goals come in, which is not just saying, are you interested in being at the goal line, but are you interested in doing all the work required? So once the enthusiasm goes and then it gets hard slog, and see, here's where the why comes in again. Why do you want to do this? And if you've got this true north, if you've got this value-based horizon goal, then what that does is it allows you, and this is really important because we live in a society that's characterized by go big or go home. So as a result, when we think of our goals, we think about the big goals, and we think about going from, this little one to the next big one to the next big one. What happens? You start change, it gets difficult, you got to go big, smaller, smallest. That's the success path. So rather than this idea, and this is where people get disappointed because they were hoping they'd be further along. No. You're not in control of the pace of change. You do what you can do and you'll see what comes back. And what hits you back, that's what you have to do. So it becomes really an opportunity for learning. And the best way to learn is to break it down. So as a psychologist, the standard is whatever goal you tell me you're going to do, I'm going to ask you to cut in half. It's called the rule of half. Whatever you tell me, I'm going to ask you to cut in half. And then when you run into difficulty, I'll ask you to cut in half again. And then I'll ask you to cut in half again. And I'll ask you to cut in half again. And I'll guarantee you will find a behavior you can do, your next step. And that's the journey of change.
I want to interrupt you there because what you're saying, I think, is very counter to what a lot of us hear in the media. And you said that. So let's say that I start out saying, okay, I'm going to walk 20 minutes every day. That's my New Year's resolution. Well, so when I hit difficulty, what I hear you saying is to say, okay, I'm not going to do it 7 days a week. I'm going to do it 3 days a week. Exactly. And I see how that works. And if I can't do that, then I say, okay, I'm not going to do 3 days a week. I'm going to do 2 days a week or,
Exactly.
Yeah. So get it to where I can do it and then build from there and don't feel like a failure. I'm just finding the right goal for me.
Perfect. Exactly. So this is what I say. It's an opportunity for learning. This is what I think I'd like to do. I'm going to try it. I have no idea how it's going to go. I'm only going to find out how it's going to go when I do it. And that's when this, what we call reverse shaping, kind of go smaller. And this is what helps you to learn what does actually fit. And then you will find what fits. So this stage that you're describing that most people think as failure and they stop, it's actually the most important learning phase. Because this is when you personalize your goals to your life. So you then really get realistic goals. You don't know if your goal is realistic until you start.
All right. So there are a lot of things that people with diabetes are asked to do. Eat healthy, exercise, take meds, in some cases, check blood sugar. What tips do you have to help people with diabetes establish a routine that kind of incorporates their diabetes maintenance, but doesn't make diabetes feel like something we always have to be thinking about?
Yeah. You know what? And this is where the diabetes acceptance piece really comes in, because in a way, you sort of, you can't let it go too far, but you need to feel like it's not burdening you. And so,
that balance.
I have a phrase for this, and I call it surrender to win. And so the surrender is the acceptance part. Just ask anybody who has the disease, and the first thing that they will say is, this sucks. And so that's the surrender piece. That yes, it does. It's a pain in the butt. It's hard. It's an effort. But the question is it worth it? Now think about this. How is child rearing? Bliss from the moment your child is born? Or would you say that it's actually really hard, but the most worthwhile thing that you can do? Now talk about your career. Now talk about your relationships. It turns out anything worth having, anything of value is worth working for. And so the work is done healthfully. The work is done almost happily. And this is called meaning. And life is not about happiness. Life is about meaning. So the surrender piece is to accept your disease so that then you can engage in the winning. And if you imagine living with diabetes as an empowering experience, then what we do is you get realistic goals that have meaning to you, you accomplish them, and then you move on, and then you move on, and then you move on. And this is the marathon of diabetes, which is you learn and incorporate this health behavior, then you learn and incorporate this health behavior. And what's important for me to emphasize is that each of those is the same. So taking on the next goal is just like the last goal. And it's your whole life you're going to be adjusting, because you know what? Things that you did when you were 30, you won't be able to do when you're 60, and you won't be able to do those when you're 70. And you know what? But you will find the things that you can do. So it's basically, I think you can see where I'm going with this. I'm just trying to, in a way, almost normalize diabetes as it's a disease that you didn't want. It sucks to have it. But, if you take this it's kind of like life. And what is life? Life is I deal with what comes on my plate, and it's the dignity and value and strategies I bring to bear that really make a life meaningful.
Wow, that's really inspiring. And I think that's just a fantastic way to look at it. And I really think your next step goal framework is really useful here. So I may get 10 things to do from the doctor / dietitian / diabetes educator, but I'm going to break it down to the one area where I'm going to focus, get it really simple, succeed with that, and then take on the next piece so that I don't have that sense of overwhelm.
Changing one behavior makes the next behavior easier to change. Changing two behaviors makes the next behavior easier to change. So it's not a matter of saying, if I had 100 steps and it took me a month to do step one, it's not going to take you 100 months to do 100 steps. You're going to go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6. It's going to get boring. You're going to do step 7, step 8. It's slogging. Step 9, step 10, step 11, step 15, step 30, step 60, step 90, step 100.
So the good news here is it does get easier. Folks, did you know that we do this show every month? Yes, we have about 20 past episodes of interviews with dietitians, diabetes educators, pharmacists, and of course, endocrinologists. If you'd like to watch or rewatch previous Diabetes Primetime episodes, we'll put a link to our website where you can watch past episodes anytime you want. All right, Dr. Vallis, along those same lines of making diabetes not front and center in our lives, for many people, there's a sense that everything in our life has to change all at once if we want to be healthy. Can you talk about why changing your routine can be helpful, why it doesn't have to be all or nothing?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because in a way, we can't be consumed by it. And my own attitude would be really to encourage the following. Your next choice can be healthy. It's always a present. So it doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be all. And as a matter of fact, it's probably best for you to allow yourself to really manage the push and the pull, right? You're really, really tired. You're going to have stronger cravings than if you were rested. That's just the way the brain works. So it's all about, what are those next choices that I can make? And nobody's perfect. So I think if we shift that focus, shift that lens, you can only do what the choices immediately in front of you allow. And then if you think about my next choice can be healthy, and that's why the ultimate goals need to be more values, true north goals, not, I'm trying to break the men's marathon record for, juggling and running at the same time, which, by the way, is a real thing.
Dr. Vallis, once again, I talk to you and I feel like change is very possible and something that all of us can do. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us tonight.
You're more than welcome.
Folks, I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did and that you're excited to make 2021 a really awesome year. If you're recognizing that you could use some support as you're trying to make changes, I would definitely suggest you check out the Diabetes Plate Methods Support Facebook group. We'll put a link to it in the comments. It's a fantastic group of folks with diabetes who encourage and support one another. And it's a great way to have a sense of connection and community, which is so important, especially right now. Before we go, here is the answer to tonight's trivia question. True or false, dehydration can have a negative impact on your mood and energy levels? The answer is true. All the more reason to make sure you are drinking enough water during the course of a day. And if you haven't answered the trivia question yet, just tell us what you thought of tonight's show and you will get that awesome morning routine worksheet. I'll be back with you next time, Tuesday, February 9th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, talking all about heart health. I hope you'll be able to join us. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and Happy New Year. Good night.